right, everybody, we are back. Welcome to the Solution Stack. We're back in our new video setup. This is pretty rad. We can do things webinar style. So I know we were looking at some of the numbers, and about 30, 40 people watching us. So thanks, guys.
Nice.
Yeah, I know, getting up there. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the specific model as it relates to modern cyber tooling. Now, I know we've talked about a lot of cybersecurity, but tell me, what do you mean by tooling?
So tooling is generally software. It could be hardware, appliances, things like that. It's your EDRs. It's your SIM, your firewall. Any integrations into like your 365 tenants, stuff like that. It's the actual things doing the policy enforcement, right? Locking that door, opening it up.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, when we were talking before off camera the other day, you were talking about like the mental model, because that's a big thing that I think that we're trying to get across in these is how you got to shift your thinking, right? So tell me about that model that has been in the past and why it's busted.
Yeah. So before the cloud, BC.
Do you seriously? You call it BC?
No, actually, that just kind of came to me right there, but I'm going to start doing that now.
Stamp it. That's yours.
I hosted a meeting at our data center earlier today, and one of the people came in and said, "Am I in the cloud now?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Anyway, so in the old days, before cloud, really the architecture was designed to keep people out of your stuff, right? So defending the perimeter, right? This is your like firewall, the endpoint stuff. Anything inside of that wall was considered trusted, and that just doesn't hold up anymore. In large part because of cloud, right? So cloud is pulled the data and these resources out of your physical control, which is the quote unquote perimeter of old, and expanded the perimeter to a number of satellite pieces. And so, the inside isn't really the inside like it used to be. Now it's inside the tool itself, whether it's a Amazon S3 bucket or a Microsoft 365 tenant, Google Workspace, whatever that looks like. It's now about the identity, right? So it used to be, hey, there's like really a physical barrier between you and the rest of the world, and now really that only barrier is your username and password, because your resources are scattered around all over, and you don't always have control of who can get to the front door, right? So if you think of like a firewall that's like a gate at the end of your driveway, your door into your house is your username and password.
But I lock
that
it.
Gate is gone, right?
So if it's gone, what do you mean the gate? Like, because I think in the sense of cybersecurity, as far as I know, like you said, I got a password, a username, nobody can get at it, so I'm good. I've locked the door.
Right, but they can still drive into your driveway and try the lock, right? Whereas before they couldn't do that at all. Where the desktop is usually sitting behind a firewall that's a barrier between you and the internet, so to speak. Microsoft isn't, right? Google isn't. So literally anybody can come up and try to jimmy the lock or craft a key that will work. If extending out that analogy.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
it used to be you put antivirus on your machine, you put a firewall in place. Most people would check the box, call it done. But at this point, those traditional models just don't work anymore.
Which is why I know in past episodes we've talked about a perimeter, right?
Yeah.
So and that's the big thing. And again, for everybody watching, one of my takeaways and learning is the perimeter. Yes, it can be the bells and whistles, the tools, but the human component is crazy. That's what stood out to me, anyways.
Locks are no good if you open the door. I mean,
Yep.
that's just the very basic kind of truth around it. It's only as good as the people making sure that those perimeters remain in place. But the extension of that perimeter makes it a lot more difficult. Again, it used to be if you're on the inside of a network, you're inherently trusted. Even that these days, you can't really count on. They have what's called east-west traffic, that's device to device or system to system within your organization. North-south is like between you and the internet. And the east-west component often got overlooked, and that allowed for people who gained access to get what we call lateral movement throughout your system. And so therefore the perimeter really didn't do any good there if you're letting people in. And
Yeah.
the same applies to cloud services. If they get a hold of your, they get through that initial barrier to get into your cloud services, you still need to be able to protect things in that east to west mentality so they can't transition from service to service or area to area within those cloud infrastructures just the same. But, the days of just having a box on site, preventing
Done.
anyone from getting in, that's not where your data lives anymore. It's not where you operate. And so
Yeah.
the model itself has just changed dramatically over the last, say, 10 or 15 years.
So keeping with that same perimeter concept, tell me about what that looks like for a business, right? I don't even want to say large, small. I mean, they're all the same. But, like, what does that look like?
So at this point, your perimeter is your identity. It does go beyond that. You still need to take some reasonable security steps here, but the key to everything at this point is your username and password, because a lot of things are what they call single sign-on, right? They're
Yeah.
using the same credentials from one identity provider and kind of relaying them in various ways to other systems and things like that. So we call it the new endpoint, right? Identity is the new endpoint. Used to be they were going to try to get a virus onto your machine or get onto your machine, and that still happens, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, getting someone's Microsoft 365 username and password is one of the biggest like jackpots you can run into, because it just, generally speaking, is going to unlock so much more by having it.
So the identity part, so are you saying, like, if it's your new perimeter, I think of those two words, are you saying identity as in a hard target or a soft target? So you're known as being a hard person to get into? Like, if you're your business, like, dude, I don't want to touch that one. Those guys are gnarly.
It doesn't really work like that anymore. But, there's, I think, understanding kind of the evolution here may be helpful. So, initially,
There you go.
so everyone's a target. I just want to be clear about that. There isn't.
I have learned that.
There are some definitely more high value targets that people put a little effort into, but everyone's a target. And it used to be that very first generation. I mean, there was a time in computing there really wasn't even usernames and passwords. Well, usernames sure, but passwords really weren't that big of a factor, like network firewalls, that kind of stuff, right? But as it evolved, right, the first kind of true generation of securing your identity was that username and password, right? And then they started to add multi-factor, which is something something you have, something you are, right? So this would be your username and password plus these days a lot of times on your phone, or it could be a hardware token, or possibly biometric, and iris scans, retina scans, thumbprints, those kind of things, right?
So, go, keep going. I just had a off question to take us off
good.
with. So if that is where we're at now and we've grown from multi-factor, where do you see it 20 years? Like, dude, go super tinfoil hat.
Well, it's not exactly where we are now. So we've kind of gone a little bit beyond that, right? So because anytime you put a security measure in place, people are finding ways to attack it and
That's a game.
kind of get around it, right?
Yeah.
So they use various techniques. MFA fatigue is a big one that kind of came through. So now we've gone to fish resistant MFA, which is kind of the next piece. And then they're starting to add in a lot more consideration around this adaptive risk-based authentication. It's looking at a number of what they call signals to try to make an overall determination on what's happening and whether it's appropriate or not. So as far as like 20 to 30 years from now, honestly, I think there's a number of ways it could go. I think that, blockchain tokens and things like that are probably in the future here, like as a very basic component of identity management. And there's probably some of that going on now, but it's not super like spread out, like well adopted. So there's
how would that work? That's an interesting concept. So if you wanted to prove that I was who I was or business, would they do like a Solana deposit and then a Solana withdrawal, or a XRP and an XRP? Be like, all right, he's legit.
It would work something like that, yeah. Again, I'm not super familiar with how that would be applied in authentication at this point, but it is a technology that I think could factor in at some point.
I like the idea. It's an idea.
Yeah, and it has some interesting connotations. I mean, the thing that we're all, I think, kind of holding our breath around is this like post-quantum cryptography and what that's going to look like. So some of the algorithms and some of the ciphers, even, these are going to advance at a blistering pace. And so ultimately, I can't really project that far out, quite frankly. It just changes so quick and goes in a number of different directions. I somewhat liken this to the VHS Betamax thing, right? By most technical measures, Betamax was the superior product, but VHS won out. And I kind of, again, rough parallel here. There's a number of different ways it can go. Whether the best one gets chosen, hard to say, but it's going to be a lot different. I can tell you that. I'm just not sure exactly how.
Right. I think your biometric component goes actual bio instead of just looking.
Like DNA.
Yes. Yeah. I think. Yeah. There we go. Let's get off that road. Let's talk about it.
Well, I mean, just be honest. There's probably just a short window after that people will be able to fake DNA.
Ooh.
I think with quantum computing in particular, that could be a reality.
You think quantum computing is going to kill Bitcoin blockchain like it says they will?
Probably. I mean, I'm not a quantum expert by any means, but what I do know of it is the ability for it to get to an answer through a very large data set is incredibly efficient, and some of the stuff they're doing there is pretty mind-blowing. I took I don't know what, trigonometry was the highest math I went to or something, so I'm certainly not in the weeds on the math behind it, but it's pretty remarkable just on the surface even.
Yeah, I know. Let's forget about our notes and just talk about all the theory and stuff. That's the fun stuff. But you kind of going, we'll stay on task, right? So you talk about an arms race, right? We've talked about that before, and that's kind of what you're saying. It is now, it's going to be. There is a certain component of cat and mouse between you guys are doing security and hackers, for a better term. So that being the case, how do you, I guess what am I trying to ask? How do you see that? How do you handle that?
Yeah. So there are a number of approaches. They keeping up with the times as far as the technology goes, right? That tooling is certainly helpful. but techniques morph, and AI-driven stuff is going to bring it even further. But the ultimate reality is we're going to be a half step behind all the time. Every time we do make some advances, people are already working on how to get around those, and that's what they do. So the kind of long term here, if you think about how we got to where we are today, it was a lot of, oh, someone got through this. How did they get through it? Let's tear that apart and try to prevent that from happening in the future. So it's kind of going to be that cat and mouse game. I think AI is going to accelerate both sides. It may actually give defense a little bit more like proximity to attackers than what we have now. So we might be a quarter step behind. But there's generally going to be a trailing effect on anytime there's a new novel approach to an exploit or an attack method, we're going to have to adapt to fix that.
Yeah. Weren't you saying something? Oh, it's because you're not moving. Do this.
Yeah. That's fine. Soft light for better living.
Yeah. It's kind of like we went into romantic mode.
Yeah.
Now, in the past, you've talked about EDRs and XDRs, specifically with this. Explain that a little bit more. I mean, you guys live in an acronym business, but, business owner, I'm like, I just think it's a PlayStation game.
Yeah, so these are kind of rooted in antivirus, right? So antivirus, from the past was looking for what they call signatures. These are fingerprints for files, and that got broken pretty quickly in relative terms. They started, because they understood that this is what's being looked for, so we're going to do something different. So they're, doing what they call polymorphic malware, which changes itself over time. And
what?
Yeah, so it rewrites the signature. It changes enough to where it doesn't match what the antivirus was expecting, and it's a logical function where it morphs. It literally changes the aspect of it as it propagates through networks and through different systems. And then
that is
fileless
wild.
attacks, this malware that really doesn't ever touch the disk, right? It runs in memory. You'll see that a lot on phones. You may have seen I think it was CISA put out a warning to, or maybe it was NSA, reboot your home router because they're not putting a file on there or code. They're loading stuff into memory that runs. Because if you think about how a computer works, right, the files on disk, they get loaded into RAM, and then the processor uses that to take action. Sometimes it'll reference those static files. Sometimes it will just work from what's in RAM, and they're writing this malware that sits directly in the RAM. You may have also heard like rebooting your cell phone on a periodic basis is useful because, again, a lot of these attacks are fileless and they run entirely in RAM. So they also, in some cases, can turn your security tools against you.
That's nuts.
It's the ingenuity that's put in place for some of these attacks are pretty clever, right? So, using known tools like PowerShell, right? They call that living off the land. These are system tools, configuration errors, just general cyber hygiene things that allow them to utilize stuff that's known to be good, right, or assumed to be good within the environment to carry out their nefarious activities. And this is where things like EDR and XDR come into play. So endpoint detection and response, this is generally more of a behavior monitor. So it's looking at not just, hey, it's PowerShell running, but what is it doing, right? Is it reaching out to the internet? Is it doing things that this user generally doesn't do, or trying to touch things that it shouldn't? And then it can kind of take action based on that, right? So that's the response part. For example, if we get a notice that certain actions have been taken, like it will automatically isolate that device from the network, right? So it kind of
And you have
builds.
to install these, right?
Yeah, it is still software. It is still installed on the machine. XDR is a little bit different in that it looks at it from multiple different angles, right? It's looking at network traffic from, we'll say, the outside of your machine. It could be looking at like correlating across all kinds of different systems to say, here's the entire picture, because your machine's only going to see what your machine is doing, right? What it's connected to, what actions it's taking. But XDR is going to sit a layer above that, and it's going to monitor across the entire network. So, for example, if a machine gets compromised, they find that they can move laterally to another system or two or three, and then all of a sudden they have multiple different ways to attack things. You know, traditional EDR could miss that. AV will definitely miss that in most cases. But the XDR really does kind of pull in all of these signals from these different places that are being monitored to create that full picture, and then they can get a better idea of what's actually happening.
So when you install that, I just want to make sure I understand. Is it one piece of software, and within it is EDR and XDR? One's on computer, one's out?
No, they're separate things.
Separate.
So EDR is on the endpoint itself. XDR is typically an appliance or like a dedicated server that kind of takes all these different feeds and correlates them together. So it could be that it's a central brain with an endpoint agent as well, but generally speaking, EDR is a little more focused on the endpoint that it's installed on, whereas XDR is going to be much more holistic across the entire environment.
Got it. Okay, so question for you, because when you're saying that, I mean, obviously you follow AI as much as everybody does, but Claude and Claude Bot, right? Or Claude, whatever it is, where you'll install it and it does everything for you. Opens browsers, does a lot what sounds like what XDR is. Would you say, don't do it? Or would you be like, yeah, no big deal?
Somewhere in the middle. You know, I wouldn't do it on your primary workstation. So typically, I think best practice would be to have kind of an isolated device that does those things for you. When I say isolated, I mean that's all you use it for. You know, that's a lot of these. What are they? Like Mac Studios and Mac Minis and things like that.
Yeah,
people are
exactly.
using for this to, you know, one, not interrupt it, right? Because you don't necessarily want to say you have to reboot for patching or whatever, right? You want to make sure that it's able to continue doing what it needs to do. And then second is, you know, it isolates that from your device. Now, that's a whole rabbit hole that goes pretty deep, but at the end of the day, if with the appropriate precautions, all of that is perfectly fine. But taking the time to understand what it's doing and how to mitigate it from going rogue or being used against you, and it should be, you know, top of the list for doing this. It's not always, but you know, that's certainly best practice is get your house in order before you you know, let the toddler loose.
Don't do your banking transactions on your computer and then have Claudebot do some investigative reporting. That's what gnarly would. Well, that kind of goes back, or not goes back, but leads into the question of, you know, email threats as well as AI. Right? We always come back to that's a great starting point for attacks. Like, so, I mean, you guys must get asked that on a regular basis. I don't know, daily or weekly, but how do I let that into my company?
Yeah, so email is very much the like biggest attack vector, most successful attack vector, and also has a lot of different tooling and techniques to address it, right? So AI is very prominent here. on both sides. This is, attackers using AI to try to trick you, right? So, back in the day, you'd get this email from this Nigerian prince that, clearly didn't speak English and was using some random Gmail account. Like, those were relatively easy to spot,
Easy-ish.
right? Email
Yeah.
filters were pretty good at picking up some of those patterns, right? So again, you adapt to what they're doing, they adapt to what you're doing, right? So
Well, now the prince isn't a prince. He works for UPS, Amazon, and FedEx, and says, "Your package. Click this link. We don't know."
yeah, it could be any of those things. Get your free Dunkin' Donuts. I think we've caught a number of people on our phishing tests with simple things like that. Here's your $20 Starbucks gift card or whatever. So, they've definitely pivoted there. But even then, right, like we'll say that's the 2017, 2018 version of it, the 2025 version, because we solved that problem, right, or at least built some tooling to address it, right? Mm-hmm. And so now it's different techniques where it's like I've seen people put the subject line in the display name and the display name in the subject line because that confuses some traditional email gateways. There's just a number of different things where you're like, oh, that's silly, but it works. So is it silly? I don't know. But nowadays with particularly like the AI stuff, right, they're able to be much more convincing.
Oh
They're
my
able to
gosh.
understand tooling. They're able to kind of craft things that find those cracks and get through. Teams messages, right? People sending bad links through Teams messages bypasses email in a lot of cases, right? Attacking you through like your LinkedIn profile. There's just so many different ways that people can get through. We had one the other day where somebody did a Google search for a like travel booking thing that they were trying to sort out with an airline, and somebody had a sponsored ad, and they weren't the airline, but they kind of made it look like they were, right? So
No way.
the person called up, they asked for their confirmation number, they gave them the confirmation number, they had all of the information about their flight, and then they said, hey, we need to make sure that you get this all confirmed, and it's a $300 fee. We're like, what? But thankfully, they kind of realized that something was going on there and stopped, thankfully.
Wait, so they
And-
use scraping tools to go find
No, they
email?
paid Google to put their ad, right? So
Right.
it's this malvertising.
malvertising.
You can pay, so malicious advertising.
Can I get a pen real quick? I got to write that down. Malvertising.
Yeah, so any of those sponsored links, I would avoid those. Definitely want to just try to find the actual link to the website down below. Because
Did you
they
just
do
make
because,
that up?
What's that?
Did you just make that up?
No, that's a well-known concept.
Since when? That's the first time I've ever heard of malvertising.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. There was a pretty famous one where somebody put a bad package that a lot of people use, and they put the download link in a sponsored ad. They clicked on it, it downloaded software that had been altered, and then installed it, right? So again, they didn't have to get your username or password. They didn't have to convince you to do anything other than select the incorrect link from Google.
That's makes you not want to do
these
anything
things
online.
are more potent than you think.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, like how many people Google search on a particular piece of software, if you get like a fraction of 1%, that's probably still tens of thousands of people overall,
Yeah.
or multiple thousands in a lot of cases. But there's it's pretty sneaky. Give them that. But that's a well organized, well run company, but just not necessarily on the right side of the law.
Golly.
Nowadays the bigger concerns are starting to come around. These emails that are crafted that are very, very convincing because AI can take photos of you and that it just collects from like your LinkedIn profile or wherever, and it can even like update the like headshot in the signature or whatever, right? Like there's very clear, like very well written email chains, super high convincing. You can clone voices, you can clone videos. I mean, I'm sure it's only a matter of time, because I'm at 40 viewers now. That somebody's going to create a fake video of me. So,
Yeah.
I think that's how
I
you really made it.
Yeah, if they start dubbing your voice. So the deep fake is real. How are you guys handling that? Like, what's the advice?
So it's non-technical.
Don't be
I
stupid.
think a lot of people think that there's a technical solve for this, and to a certain extent there is, but it's definitely more of a behavior thing, right? This is definitely something where training people on non-technical lines of communication, right? Reaching out to the person to verify this was them, making sure that they're checking in with other people to validate that content. The AI video, like deepfake problem in real time, there's a common thing with hiring right now where if you're doing a remote video, they'll ask you to like hold three fingers above in front of your face
Yeah.
because that breaks the AI filtering. And even if you like turn your head past a certain angle, like these AI filters can't handle that, and they start to break down. So it becomes pretty apparent that this is a deep fake. That's more in real time. Some of these
That's insane.
audio recordings and video recordings, they're problematic for sure.
Everybody, we're real.
Yeah. So there's other things that you can do. This is something my dad taught me when I was young. We had a family code word, and so anytime I got a message from somebody else, that code word, if that code word wasn't there, I was to disregard that message, right? I wasn't going to do anything. So I grew up in a military family. My dad was a single father, so I took a lot of cabs and relied on people for rides, and sometimes I didn't know them all that well. So we would have this code word, and it changed, based on usage and stuff like that, like what it was for, when it was, and stuff like that. But he would always tell me, if I need, so this is me, this is the code word. Having something like that set up with people, especially that might have influence, it certainly could help prevent some of these things. Calling people back to known numbers, not just taking what's in their email signature, those kind of things. And again, it's a non-technical solution to a technical problem, but
It can work.
part of that is because you don't have a lot of technical recourse here as a whole.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. In the military, we'd call that, hard target. You could get more technical on it, call it defense in depth. I noticed that was one of the phrases, but going on that, it is the way that you think and the things that you have that are layers and levels. And you guys actually go into that with clients. You guys believe in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, defense in depth is a core principle of cybersecurity. There's relying on any one thing, I'll say pretty much in any aspect of life, is probably going to let you down at some point. It's definitely better to have these layers in place to make sure that when one fails, another can pick it up, right? There's no
Right.
single control that's sufficient in most cases. It will inevitably, again, kind of fail at one of those layers at some point. So, it's again kind of what we were talking about with this analogy of you've got the gate in front of your driveway, you've got the lock in your house, you got the doors to your bedroom, those kind of things. Those are all kind of simplistic, I don't want to say defense in depth, but barriers that when you translate that to cybersecurity, kind of equate to that defense in depth.
Right. Sure. And it helps you to sleep at night. So, okay, here's a question as you're talking about that. Gate, key, your moat in a castle, whatever. What thing is the pistol that you're next to your bed?
Ooh, the power button? No, I think
Off, on.
Yeah, I mean, really, the in this scenario, the pistol is the person, right? Because
Okay.
there are um, like social engineering is by far the biggest threat, and the human is the biggest kind of stop there, right? You can get past technology through again something like silly email means, but it still takes that person to click that link or to take that action in those cases, right? If you're talking about purely technical stuff, probably something like an EDR, XDR, SOC, those are probably the most kind of last line of defense, but still pretty potent because generally speaking, if they've gotten to an endpoint, they've bypassed a ton of that, depth already. And
Right.
so it's about the only thing you have left is the human and then some of that detect and response technology.
Man, it's like you're building an army. You have to build an army around your bit. Like you're the sentinel. Okay, you guys are, recon. You guys are snipers. You guys are our infantry.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, like anything complex, it takes complex solutions, and most solutions are good at one or two things. But all of these tools that try to tell you, "Hey, we eliminate risk," or zero breach. What? No, that's
Yeah.
that's marketing BS. It really does take a well thought out, layered approach, and reviewing it and testing it, right? That's why people do penetration testing and things like that, is because no matter how much you throw at it, I want to say there was like this glass wing thing that Anthropic dropped. I think it was Anthropic. They pulled just like hundreds of thousands of vulnerabilities out, right? Some of these things are 25, 30 years old, have gone
Pulled
through
them out of where?
just through analyzing code and stuff like that, right? So they
Oh,
used AI to do some really deep analysis. I don't, do you hear about this mythos is too powerful to release?
yeah.
Right. Well, it's related to that.
Got it.
Um,
I just want to go off a freaking side road. Like, how is that all going to come out and get us? It's going to have to jump into like one of Boston Dynamics, like robots or something, and then it's AI. It's like, how does all this thing get in? It's in a box. It's in here.
well, I, yeah, no comment on the Boston
Another
Dynamic
episode.
thing. They've gone to, didn't they get bought by, who was that, Hyundai or something?
I don't know. I was just thinking the dog with the gun on his back that all of a sudden AI
Yeah.
gets in there and goes, "Oh, bad people."
Well, I think they're already playing with that with drones at the moment. So,
I know.
we'll see how that goes.
You follow
But
Androl?
really, what's that?
Do you follow Androl?
Androl?
Lucky Palmer's company?
No.
Write that one down.
ANDRIL?
DRUL, Androl. Lucky Palmer. Yeah, and we'll circle back on next show. Or I'll text you. I'll text you on that. Well, I'll send you a pigeon because a pigeon can't be infected with malware.
It can be infected with other things, though. And it can infect you.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so now the concept too, if we're talking about building this perimeter, this moat, whatever, is that it's hard to detect and defend what you can't see, right? So if I don't know I'm being attacked, I don't know if I'm being attacked. Everything is all good to go. So how do you assist a business in finding what's wrong?
Well, the honest answer is, it's very difficult.
You wouldn't know.
So,
You don't know what
especially
you don't know.
when these are what they call 0-day or, these exploits, these tactics, these techniques that aren't known, right? So, there is a limit to what tooling can do, especially when it's keyed to budget, right? So some of these companies that have, we'll say, infinite money can certainly do a lot more with it. But, if someone was to get into our client system right now and was evading all of our tools, well, the short answer is we wouldn't know. And it can happen.
Until it blows up.
until it blows up, right? Until there's something that they do that trips over a tool that we have in place. But during that time, they're out there living their best lives on your network, right? This is moving laterally, spreading through the environments, grabbing stuff, escalating privileges. We did a pen test engagement. To be clear, we didn't do the pen test; we facilitated it, and the company was able to take information from like a packet that it captured, had some plain text content in it, and escalate that all the way to domain admin, which is bad.
Damn.
And so the fact that they were in the network already was a big benefit to them. And that just kind of illustrates what happens if somebody does get on a system and is able to move without detection. And they did it in something like 4 hours, right? This was several years ago, so I'd imagine that time frame is probably a little bit shorter. Now, it used to be that people could be, and often were, in systems for weeks or months without being detected. Mm-hmm. And they were able to essentially do whatever they wanted to, and they would get this information or access or persistence or whatever that was, and by the time you found them, it was already well too late. But that's why these tools, again, have evolved, right? The behavior analysis, right? These EDRs, these XDRs, these kind of things. So, again, it's not so much about trying to build an impenetrable wall. It's, okay, we know that somebody's going to get over or under or through that wall at some point. What happens when they get in there, right? Is it
how do you spot them?
Is it, are you just walking to the treasure, or is it more of like a dungeon crawl where you got to go through a number of perils to get there? So visibility is a key problem. It's a key factor, especially now that with AI. We're seeing accounts get turned and burned, like email accounts, in like 15 minutes, where people are getting in, they're hooking in automation, they're dumping everything they can, and then they just start spamming out new phishing emails from that account, knowing that they're going to get caught and stopped at some point. If they don't, Yahtzee bonus. But they've already, accomplished their mission, right? So there's also like industry frameworks, like MITRE ATT&CK, and what they call the kill chain, where you can kind of map out the logical progression of how an attack unfolds, and you can put in key booby traps, if you will, to try to break that chain, right? So there is a pretty well documented workflow for a lot of attack styles, and knowing where those kind of entry points and kind of key pivot moments are, you can actually do some stuff to disrupt them. So even if you don't see them, they're not visible, they're not going to get to where they want. And eventually that will create that visibility, because they're going to trip over something that you're doing that's going to call it out.
Yeah, there's patterns you're looking for. So it's almost a conditional logic. If this, then that, and they came from over here. If this, like that kind of a thing?
It's more of a... conditional logic, but not in like the computer sense. It's
right.
It's more in the approach.
Patterns. Now, you just made me think of something, because you're talking about, and in my little brain, you come in, so Fusery comes in and helps a business, an entity. But I realize how many external forces or external entities all have access to that business, right? So call them vendors, partners, whatever. How much does that play into effect? Because at some point, it's almost like a company might hand another company the keys to the kingdom because they have to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? So talk to me about that. Like, how do you tell everybody, stop doing that?
Are you familiar with the concept of nobody stops you when you're wearing overalls and a clipboard? Right? Like,
it's a variation, but I don't the clipboard. Tell me about that one.
Well, it's probably more like a doctor's coat and a clipboard, but essentially, if you look like you belong there for whatever reason, right? People don't know you, then they're probably just going to let you about your business if you look like you're doing something like maintenance or whatever, right? So that kind of concept, I think they did like an experiment where like people with doctor's coats and clipboards or whatever were getting people to do some wild stuff. They weren't doctors; they're just random people, and that's kind of what this looks like. There's an assumed trust with vendors and outside companies, but you could get attacked through your HVAC system if you're allowing your vendors to control it from the outside, right?
100%.
That's a real thing that has happened.
Yeah.
And you can get compromised through using open source software, or even companies who SolarWinds is a big one here. They got compromised. The attackers essentially built stuff into their update packages for the software. So everyone just went and updated this software, and they just essentially pulled down malicious code.
That's crazy.
So when we talk about vendors and outside companies who have access to your system, like, those are the things that are that clipboard that let them just kind of walk through the gates, right?
I think about that all the time, but then I think of like single sign-in and like, oh, just use your Google account, and how many people do that? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'd honestly rather have that. Inherently, like, passwords are a weak link because passwords require you either to have something you can memorize or have something you can store it with, right? Like password manager. But at the end of the day, the back-end connections between systems, I think they're actually a better option overall, right? These OIDCs and SAMLs and OAuths, I think they're actually quite helpful.
Useful.
Yeah.
I've seen Sicario too many times, so every time I just think someone's dressed up and they're gonna put a silencer to my forehead.
Well, the funny part is that movies have, just media in general has a pretty skewed version of technology that they present. And then there are cases where the reality of the situation is far more wild than what the movies do. But they're just two different things. There's even for small businesses, like, this is a big problem. And a growing one at that, right? Like, this isn't something that people have been considering for forever and ever. It's a relatively newcomer to the cyber risk landscape, and that's for us as an MSP, for example, we have to be very, very careful with what we do and how we do it, because we have access to multiple systems.
Right.
So we're a pretty big target, right? We have to be on our game here. But it is very much a topical thing, because a lot of the bigger kind of newsworthy items are coming down through this third-party risk management kind of vendor supply chain compromise, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
So, given that, as you were talking, I'm thinking of all the bad of AI. How do you guys implement it on the good side, right, on your side? Where does it actually fit for you guys?
Well, I can't really divulge much on that. No, I'm kidding.
Fair enough.
So, it's kind of all over. There's some of it's good, some of it's bad, but yeah, a lot of it's in our tooling. A lot of it's in particularly email stuff, right? There's an AI component. Pretty much every modern email security platform has some sort of AI backing it, right? There's anything that is ingesting signals, which are just discrete activities, right? Events that are happening throughout networks, incredibly noisy. They likely have some sort of AI in the background processing those. It could go into a whole number of things like AI penetration testing, which I'm not really sold on just yet, but the reality is it's not far out from being pretty mainstream. But it is effectively anywhere you need to do analytics at scale, it's probably AI. Email is a huge one, right? Correlating signals across multiple different things. There's definitely some AI behind that. XDR, EDR stuff starting to have some more prominent AI angles to it, right? And then there's the governance side, right? Making sure that AI isn't used against you by your own people is
Right.
a pretty big factor right now that's oddly still not getting enough attention in my mind. This shadow IT, and by that means use of unauthorized tools. It's going to happen because people really, at the end of the day, just want to get their job done in the most efficient and kind of painless way possible. So using AI to understand who's using AI, that's starting to become a thing as well, right? Analyzing network logs and stuff like that. So short answer is, yeah, it's pretty widespread throughout tooling. The longer answer is, it's still varying degrees of effectiveness, and some of it we choose to turn off or just ignore or not use. But it is pretty much in everything these days.
I think the thing is, how do you ask the questions, right? I think people are learning how to ask different questions in use of AI. Not only use it, but how do you prompt? What are you giving it access to? So I think that would be something that's you have to flush out before using it. At least that's what we do.
You certainly should, in my opinion, and a lot of people don't. But they're kind of passively accepting the risk that comes along with it. So, you're not going to tell certain people to not do a thing or to take these precautions, right? People just want to go. They just want to do the thing. And a lot of times that leads to, I don't want to say catastrophe, but problems for sure. And in catastrophe, I think a lot of folks fail to really fully comprehend is the scale at which and the speed at which AI can do damage if it's not put in place correctly.
Yeah, I see it all over. It's the do this will save you time and security and do it yourself and blah 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 blah. It's creating such a massive vacuum. It's bananas.
Yeah, and from small business to enterprise, it's same problem throughout. Obviously they have different tooling to try to manage that and different approaches and those kind of things, right? Regulated industries are really, really at risk here. These kinds of things can certainly put you in some hot water with the government, and you don't really want that.
Don't get started on that. Let's not go there. Oh man.
For a lot of people, it's got to be in the back of their mind, if not the front of their mind, all the time, because you play in the world that you live in, right?
Yeah. You can hear James's responses at Solution Stack After Dark.
Okay, so let's get the bleep ready.
Yeah. Let's wrap it all together, right? So at the end, I'm a business owner going, oh my gosh, I've listened to this for, however long, and it sounds complicated and expensive. Because, all this does, it's not overwhelming, but it's like, what bucket do I put it in, right? How do you make a case that it's, you have an IT guy, but call us, we can help you with this.
Sure, and IT is an interesting term to me these days, and this is not an IT problem, right? There are technical solutions, but this is a business problem, right? Overall, right? You have things like cyber liability insurance or regulation or contractual obligations, especially if you're subcontracting or kind of taking on work for bigger companies. And if you can't show that you've got your stuff together here, that you're putting these kind of common controls in place, right? It could cost you business, and in a lot of cases, it could put you out of business if something were to go sideways. And so you really have to weigh, like, is this worth, like, not spending the money here? Is that worth not this, getting this contract? Is it worth going out of business if I have a breach, et cetera? Right. And in some cases, it's a trust issue, right? This SOC 2, Type 2 stuff, right?
You said SOC before. What does that stand for?
In this case, Service Organization Controls. In previous, it was Security Operations Center. So there's two different, very common definitions for that acronym. But SOC 2 is a framework that's generally used by service providers to kind of attest that they have a certain level of cyber and like business controls in place, and then they audit against, hey, are you actually doing this thing and can you prove it? And then they write up a report, and it all costs a lot of money and has maybe not as much value as what people will place on it, but it's a shiny gold star you can put on your website or on your sales brochure or whatever. Yep. The reality is I've sat through tons of these audits and things, and they're only as good as the auditor, number one, and number two, they're only as good as the organization being examined. And I will say that take it all with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
The keys are, if you look at cybersecurity or just security programs in general, two different things. Cybersecurity buckets into a security program, but is not the entirety of it. Is that worth the assurance that things like new contracts are going to be easier to get and hold on to? You're not going to have regulators bring it down your neck. And that if something goes sideways, you have some sort of defensible claim to say, hey, I tried to do the right thing here, so you don't get your butt sued out of existence. And so, that's kind of the three big buckets that I like to put things in is, how do you defend what you're doing if something goes wrong? What are those relationships that are going to be affected if you don't do it? And then what is that going to cost you at the end of the day if something were to go sideways?
Right. Well, and I think one of the things that I had said earlier is posture, right? So posture, you're in a posture to fight, you don't care. What's your organization's posture? And I think if you can convey that to a business and then they want to replicate that, I mean, that sounds like it'd be a good mix.
Yeah, and broadly we call that risk appetite.
Oh, it's not.
It's how much are you willing, like how much risk are you willing to accept within your operations? Some are very low risk appetite, and some are voracious. They just love the risk and num, eat it up.
hungry hippo.
Yeah, for sure. And all of that equates to how you treat your security program, and then the cybersecurity that buckets into it, what you're willing to do to make sure that those things are driving down that risk.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, my brain is full, and I'm sure everybody listening, their brain is absolutely full. Anything else you want to add?
Technology is a wonderful tool, but it is just that, a tool. You can give two different people a saw, Master Carpenter and Joe off the street, or me, not great with a saw, and you're going to get two much different outcomes, right? So turning on a tool does not mean you are safe, and a tool alone does not mean that you're doing security. And so, this more, as this evolves, it's even more important to kind of do the work up front, understand what that risk appetite is, understand what your governance is. This could be an internal or an external thing, and then make the rules of the game match, and then play the game in a way that meets the rules. So all of that is to say, security is a mindset, and it's a business function as much or more than it is an IT function. And that's how I would recommend every business owner or anyone who's accountable for anything within a business to think of it.
Yeah, all good. Good advice. Alrighty, sir. Well, we've covered a lot today. So just remind everybody, like, subscribe, do all the things that you know how to do. Find us at fuse3.com, and you'll be talking to James. Everybody talk to James. He loves talking to everybody all at once. I'm just kidding. All right, man. We'll catch you on another one.
All right. Thanks, man.